What happens when a woman's life crumbles at the hands of those who should love her? Samantha, a 30-year-old woman, is living a nightmare unfolding in her own home, the only place that has always been a safe harbor for her. Married for 10 years to Mark, a man who was once loving, he now appears apathetic and distant, especially when a financial proposal threatens their home, a legacy from her mother. What will she do when she realizes that those she trusts the most are ready to betray her? Samantha has always dreamed of having a full and happy life, surrounded by the love of her family. Her home, a place filled with memories and meaning, represents all of that. However, when a doctor makes her a tempting offer to buy the property, Mark begins to pressure her to sell, leading to a conflict that shakes the foundations of their marriage. Samantha's refusal to give up her home breeds a silent resentment in Mark, creating a barrier between them. Thus, the family environment that should be welcoming turns into an emotional battlefield. As Mark withdraws, the pressure mounts with the arrival of Virginia, Mark's mother, who moves into their home. The relationship between Samantha and Virginia quickly becomes tense, as Virginia is critical and ungrateful, while Mark increasingly shows indifference to his wife's suffering. The weight of this new dynamic begins to deeply affect Samantha, who is already under pressure to manage the home and now deals with a hostile figure in her own house. What should have been a peaceful life turns into a nightmare when Samantha receives a devastating diagnosis: advanced stage cancer. Instead of finding support in Mark and Virginia, she is met with coldness and disdain. The revelation of Mark's true nature hits her hard when she discovers that his priorities are far from her health and well-being. Mark's selfishness becomes increasingly evident, while Virginia only cares about how Samantha's death could financially benefit them. With her health deteriorating and love turning into despair, Samantha finds comfort in Sarah, her longtime friend. Sarah and other relatives form a support network around Samantha, offering the affection and care she so desperately needs. When Samantha's health improves in a surprising and miraculous way, a new hope emerges in her life. During her recovery, she meets Philip, a handyman sent to fix the roof of her house. The connection between them blossoms, bringing a new love and joy that Samantha never thought possible again. While Mark and Virginia await Samantha's death, ready to profit from the sale of the house, an unexpected invitation changes everything. What they thought would be a discussion about inheritance turns out to be the announcement of Samantha's marriage to Philip. At this moment, Mark is forced to confront the consequences of his actions, and Samantha finally finds the freedom she has long desired. Her marriage to Philip symbolizes not just a new beginning, but also the promise of a life filled with love and support, far from the shadows that haunted her for so long. Samantha felt increasingly trapped in her own home, a place that had once been a refuge but had now turned into an emotional prison. The walls that once protected her now seemed to suffocate her. Mark's apathy hurt her deeply, and Virginia's presence made everything even more unbearable. The woman who should have been a maternal figure in her life became a constant source of criticism and disdain. The burden of lovelessness began to affect not only her mental health but also her physical well-being. As the days passed, the cancer diagnosis felt like an inescapable reality, and the sense of loneliness grew. Samantha tried to process all of this as she looked at herself in the mirror, noticing the deep dark circles forming under her eyes. She wondered if the cancer was a reflection of what was happening in her life, if the stress and emotional pain were manifesting in her body. The thought of losing her home, of leaving everything she knew behind, tormented her. However, what hurt her the most was Mark's indifference. Instead of showing support, he seemed more concerned about the financial future of the house than about her well-being. Virginia, on the other hand, seized every opportunity to remind Samantha that, should she fail in her fight against the illness, the house would become an asset to be sold. The way her mother-in-law spoke about it left Samantha in shock. It was as if her life were merely a matter of numbers and properties. This harsh reality began to erode the little hope that remained in her heart. It was in this dark moment that Sarah, her longtime friend, stepped in. Since childhood, Sarah had always been a source of light and support for Samantha, and she did not hesitate to be present, bringing with her a breath of fresh air. Sarah encouraged Samantha to seek proper treatment and not to give up the fight. They spent hours talking, laughing, and reminiscing about the good times they had together. This unwavering friendship helped Samantha face her new reality. The strength that Sarah offered Samantha helped her see a way forward. With treatment underway, and after a month of chemotherapy sessions, something surprising happened. Her body began to respond positively. The doctors were optimistic, and Samantha started to believe that she could indeed win this battle. During this recovery period, she met Philip, a handyman sent to fix her house's roof. Philip was kind, attentive, and had a smile that made Samantha's heart race. He brought a revitalizing energy, and the connection between them quickly blossomed. As Samantha's friendship with Philip deepened, her relationship with Mark and Virginia became increasingly tense. Mark not only showed disinterest in her new friendship but also made sarcastic comments as if he were jealous. Virginia, for her part, cared less about Samantha's health and more about how her relationship with Philip could affect the plans she had for the house. The situation became unsustainable, and Samantha found herself caught between a rock and a hard place. Should she continue to fight for her marriage or seek a new path alongside someone who truly valued her? The moments of joy with Philip brought a new perspective to Samantha. She realized that, despite her health still being a constant concern, there was the possibility of true love. However, the shadows of the past still haunted her. Whenever Mark entered the room, a tension hung in the air, and the unspoken words became a weight in their hearts. Conversations became increasingly difficult, and Mark's lack of emotional support turned into a wound that seemed impossible to heal. The challenge of dealing with Mark's emotional betrayal and Virginia's pressure weighed heavily on Samantha's shoulders. Each day, she questioned whether she would have enough strength to break free from that cycle of pain, or if it would be easier to stay in the safety of what she already knew. This internal struggle challenged her to reevaluate her beliefs about love, loyalty, and what it truly meant to be happy. As the conflicts escalated, Samantha found herself at a turning point. With the help of Sarah and the support of Philip, she began to understand that she deserved more than a love that left her at the mercy of indifference. The new love blooming in her life was not just an escape, it was a sign that life still had much to offer. However, the shadows of the past continued to follow her, and the battle for her emotional freedom was just beginning. Samantha felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The chemotherapy treatment left her exhausted, and the tension at home made everything even more difficult. Every time Mark entered the room, a wave of discouragement washed over her. He seemed increasingly distant, as if Philip's presence threatened the stability he was trying to maintain. Mark not only ignored Samantha's feelings but also became more and more hostile. He was sarcastic, making comments that left her questioning her worth. The emotional pain compounded the physical pain, and Samantha found herself on the brink of collapse. Virginia, on the other hand, wasn't helping. Her mother-in-law pressured her to focus on recovery, but her words always carried a critical tone. "You need to recover soon," she would say, "or the house will become a burden for all of us." These statements sounded like an ultimatum, and Samantha felt more and more like an intruder in her own home. The house, which had once been a refuge, had now turned into an emotional battlefield. The echoes of laughter and happy moments were replaced by arguments and heavy silences. With Philip's friendship, Samantha found a temporary refuge. He made her laugh, and their conversations were a balm for her wounded soul. However, guilt consumed her. She wondered if what she felt for him was just an escape from the reality surrounding her. With each meeting, their connection deepened, but the shadow of Mark and Virginia lingered, threatening the happiness that was beginning to blossom. With every supportive message she received from Sarah, Samantha's heart filled with hope, but doubt never left her side. As the days passed, Samantha realized that the treatment was having an effect. The doctors began to speak in more optimistic terms, but the joy was overshadowed by the pressure she felt at home. Mark seemed to care less and less about her health and more about the possibility of losing the house. Discussions about money and property became a constant. "If you don't get better, we'll have to sell," he would say, as if the value of the house was more important than her life. The tension reached its peak on a rainy night. Samantha was exhausted after yet another chemotherapy session and decided she needed some time alone. As she sat on the couch, Philip called. His voice was like a ray of sunshine amid the storm. They talked for hours, laughing and sharing dreams. However, when she hung up, the weight of reality hit her hard. Mark was watching her with a piercing gaze. His anger was palpable, and Samantha knew an explosion was about to happen. "You're pulling away from me because of that guy," Mark shouted, his eyes filled with frustration. "You prefer his company over mine? I'm here, struggling to keep everything together." His words pierced deep into her heart. Samantha felt caught between a rock and a hard place, unsure how to respond. Confusion and pain overwhelmed her. What did she really want? What was more important? The love that was beginning to blossom with Philip, or the security of a marriage that had become toxic? The conversation turned into a bitter argument, and Samantha decided she could no longer endure it. With tears in her eyes, she left the house and went to a nearby park. It was a cold night, but she didn't care. The fresh air seemed to clear her mind. Sarah soon found her, concerned about her friend's emotional state. They sat on a bench, and Samantha poured out her heart, recounting the argument and the pressure she felt. Sarah listened attentively, offering support and understanding. "You can't let them nullify your life, Sam," Sarah said. "You deserve to be happy, and if that means moving on, then you should do it." Sarah's words resonated in her mind. Samantha began to realize that even amid the chaos, she still had the power to choose her destiny. The choice wouldn't be easy, but the idea of freeing herself from a suffocating relationship began to seem more and more appealing. In the days that followed, Samantha's internal conflict intensified. She wondered if she was ready to take the most difficult step of her life. As her feelings for Philip grew, the reality of her situation made her hesitate. The fear of the unknown was daunting, and the possibility of failing again paralyzed her. However, the idea of continuing to live in an emotional prison was even more terrifying. Conversations between Samantha and Philip became more frequent, and he encouraged her to be strong. He shared his own struggles, and his vulnerability touched her deeply. But the fear of hurting Mark and Virginia even more kept her trapped. The battle between heart and reason consumed her, and Samantha knew that at some point, she would have to make a decision. The dilemma haunted her, and the uncertainty about her future weighed like an anchor on her soul. The struggle for her emotional freedom was just beginning, and the choice she was about to make would change her life forever. Samantha sat in the park, the cold of the night enveloping her like a heavy cloak. Her heart was in turmoil, and the conversation with Sarah still echoed in her mind. The idea of freeing herself from a suffocating relationship drew her in, but doubt and fear of the unknown were like shadows that followed her. As she contemplated the overcast sky, a familiar figure appeared in the distance. It was Philip, with a concerned look, who found her sitting alone. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, sitting down beside her. The sincerity in his voice brought a small relief to Samantha's heart. She smiled sadly, trying to hide the weight she felt. "I just need some time to think," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Philip watched her for a moment, then said, "You know, I was thinking about what you told me. The pressure you're facing at home, it's unfair. No one should have to go through that." His words were like a balm for her soul, but Samantha hesitated. "I don't want to hurt anyone. Mark can be difficult, but he's still my husband. But you're losing yourself in this situation. You can't sacrifice yourself for someone who doesn't value you," Philip insisted, his eyes full of understanding. Samantha felt a wave of emotion rising, but before she could respond, Philip's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen, and the expression on his face changed quickly. "Sorry, I need to take this," he said, getting up. Samantha watched as he walked away, her heart tightening at the idea that even as she was getting closer to Philip, there were still invisible barriers between them. While he spoke on the phone, a feeling of unease began to dominate her thoughts. When Philip returned, his expression was serious. "Sorry, but I need to go. It's about a friend. He's not doing well." The concern in his gaze made Samantha's heart race. "Is everything okay?" she asked, feeling helpless. "Yes, but I really need to go. I promise I'll call you as soon as I can." As he walked away, the emptiness he left made her feel even more alone. The pressure she felt at home, combined with the uncertainty of her relationship with Philip, made her question everything. That night, the silence of the park became deafening, and Samantha realized she needed to face her emotions head-on. The next morning, as she prepared for another doctor's appointment, the tension in her house was palpable. Mark was sitting at the table, his expression closed off. The smell of coffee wasn't enough to mask the tense atmosphere. He asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm, if she was going to the doctor again. He hoped she wasn't expecting them to work miracles. His words felt like daggers, and Samantha felt anger rising within her. "Mark, I'm doing the best I can," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm not here to cause you problems. I just want to recover." He shook his head dismissively. "If you really cared, you wouldn't be so worried about that guy." The mention of Philip made Samantha's stomach churn. Anger and pain intertwined, and she felt like she was about to explode. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me." She stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. "You can't keep treating me like this. I'm not a burden." The words left Samantha's mouth before she could think of the consequences. Mark stared at her, surprised, but soon anger took over his gaze. "You are a burden, and you know it," he shouted, and the argument quickly turned into a shouting match filled with accusations and pent-up resentments. In the heat of the moment, Samantha decided she had reached her limit. She didn't want to live in that toxic atmosphere anymore, and the idea of being trapped in a suffocating relationship felt unbearable. With tears in her eyes, she grabbed her bag and left the house. The fresh air hit her like a punch to the stomach, but at the same time, it brought clarity. She needed to take a step toward her own happiness. As she walked, her thoughts were a jumble. Her heart raced, and the idea of leaving Mark terrified and liberated her at the same time. It was a life-changing decision, but she knew she had to do something. The memory of Sarah's words echoed in her mind. "You deserve to be happy." Determined, Samantha headed to the place where Philip had said he would be. When she saw him, a wave of relief washed over her. He was there, concerned, and as soon as he saw her, his face lit up. "Sam, I was worried. What happened?" With her heart racing, she took a deep breath. "I can't live like this anymore, Philip. I need help. I need you." The sincerity in her words resonated in the atmosphere between them, and Samantha realized she was ready to face her fears and start anew. The road ahead would be difficult, but freedom felt closer than ever. Samantha felt immediate relief as she shared her emotions with Philip. He looked at her with tenderness, his eyes reflecting a mix of concern and encouragement. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said softly. "We'll find a solution together." His words comforted her, but they also brought to light the weight of the decision she had just made. In the days that followed, Samantha's life began to change. She left Mark's house and moved into a small apartment she had rented. The first night alone was strange. Loneliness wrapped around her like a cold blanket, but at the same time, there was a sense of freedom. She looked out the window and saw the city pulsating with life. It was as if the world had opened up to her, offering previously unimaginable possibilities. However, freedom came at a cost. In the following days, Samantha faced waves of anxiety. Memories of Mark haunted her, and the sharp words exchanged during their arguments still echoed in her mind. The guilt of leaving everything behind tormented her. "Did I do the right thing?" she repeatedly asked herself. Philip was by her side, always willing to listen. He encouraged her to seek therapy, suggesting that talking to a professional could help her cope with the emotional confusion. Samantha hesitated but decided she needed to allow herself this chance to heal. Thus, she began attending weekly sessions. Each conversation helped her better understand her emotions and make sense of everything she had been through. "Sam, you can tell me what you're thinking," Philip said, looking into her eyes. "I want to be here for you." His words were an invitation, but Samantha hesitated. I just don't want you to get hurt because of me," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm so confused." Philip moved closer, pulling her nearer. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll take it one step at a time." His words were a foundation amidst the emotional turmoil. She decided that to move forward, she needed to confront not only her past but also the uncertainties of the present. Samantha also began to find support in other places. She reconnected with friends she hadn't seen in a while, people who had always supported her but had drifted away because of Mark. Together, they created a safe space where they could share laughter and worries. One of those friends, Anna, brought a new perspective. "You are stronger than you think, Sam. This is your chance to rediscover yourself." As the weeks passed, Samantha felt more confident. She began making small changes in her life, dedicating time to hobbies she had abandoned. Painting, which had always calmed her, became a form of expression and liberation. The vibrant colors on the canvas reflected her internal struggle and, at the same time, her desire to renew herself. However, challenges persisted. Mark began calling, trying to convince her to come back. With each call, Samantha's heart tightened. She remembered the difficult moments and how trapped she had felt. "You can't just leave me like this," he said, his voice heavy with desperation. Samantha had to learn to stand her ground. "Mark, I'm not the same anymore. I need to move on." The interactions with Mark left her distressed, but they also strengthened her. She realized that she was becoming more resolute in her decisions. At the same time, Philip supported her, always reminding her that she deserved respect and happiness. He encouraged her, telling her that she didn't need to feel guilty for wanting what was best for herself. Samantha still had difficult days. Sometimes, loneliness enveloped her like a thick fog, and doubts about her choices echoed distantly in her mind. But looking back, she realized she was breaking free from a cycle of pain. The path ahead was still filled with uncertainties, but with each small step, she felt stronger. At the end of each day, when she sat in her new room, surrounded by her paintings and memories of laughter with friends, Samantha knew that the freedom she sought was within her. She was learning to live again, to value herself, and, above all, to allow herself to be happy. Samantha began to notice that each day brought a new opportunity to rediscover herself. After leaving Mark's house, the journey wasn't easy, but she was determined to face her challenges. The loneliness that initially engulfed her started to dissipate as she allowed herself to explore her new life. Moving to the small apartment was a turning point. It was the first time in years that she had a space of her own, where she could be who she truly was, free from external pressures. With Philip's support, she began to open up to the world. He was always there, ready to listen, but also challenging her to look within herself. The therapy sessions, initially daunting, became a refuge. With each conversation, Samantha dismantled what she had built around her emotions. She began to understand that it was not just about leaving Mark behind, but about accepting that she deserved to be happy and respected. The fear of getting hurt again still lingered over her like a persistent shadow. But gradually, Samantha started to trust herself more. She realized that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but a powerful strength. By sharing her feelings with Philip, she felt lighter. He encouraged her to express her insecurities, showing her that communication was key to any healthy relationship. Her friendship with Anna also blossomed during this time. Anna became an essential ally, always reminding Samantha of her inner strength. Together, they rediscovered the simple pleasures of life, like walks in the park and afternoons spent on art. Through these experiences, Samantha began to see the beauty in little things, something she had forgotten while trapped in a toxic relationship. The laughter and moments of relaxation brought a new sparkle to her life. However, not everything was perfect. Mark's calls were constant and increasingly insistent. He desperately tried to convince her to come back, reminding her of the good times they had shared. Samantha felt torn. On one hand, there was a part of her that longed for comfort and familiarity, and on the other, there was the woman she was becoming, stronger and more self-assured. With each call, she remembered the reasons that had led her to leave everything behind. Anguish transformed into determination. She thought, "I cannot go back to who I was." It was in one of those moments of crisis that she decided she needed to stand her ground. With courage, Samantha answered one of the calls and, taking a deep breath, told Mark that she could no longer continue in that dynamic. She asserted that she needed time for herself and couldn't go back to being the person he wanted her to be, feeling a weight lifted off her shoulders. The conversation was difficult, but in the end, she felt lighter, as if she were finally freeing herself from invisible chains. As time passed, Samantha began to rediscover her passions. Painting, which had once been merely a hobby, became a form of therapy. The vibrant colors on the canvas reflected her emotions, allowing her to express what she felt without words. Each brushstroke was a step toward her recovery, a testament to her journey of overcoming. She realized that true wealth was not in material possessions, but in the ability to reinvent herself and find joy in the small things. Samantha's transformation did not go unnoticed. The friends she had reconnected with supported her every step of the way, and the friendship she cultivated with Philip deepened. He was not just a support, but someone who inspired her to be the best version of herself. Together, they discovered new places in the city, exploring cafes and galleries. Each shared moment was a new lesson about love, friendship, and the importance of valuing oneself. Looking back, Samantha recognized that each challenge she faced had shaped who she was. The lessons she learned along the way helped her become a stronger woman, more aware of her needs and desires. She started applying these lessons in her daily life, setting healthy boundaries and prioritizing her well-being. Over time, the loneliness that once dominated her was replaced by a profound sense of peace and self-worth. Samantha finally understood that life was made up of ups and downs, but that each hardship made her stronger. She had learned to love herself, to respect her own choices, and to embrace the freedom she had fought for. Thus, the transformation that began as a cry for help became an anthem of overcoming and growth. And so, she moved forward, not only in search of happiness but toward a full and meaningful life. Samantha was in her small apartment, surrounded by blank canvases and vibrant paint colors, when the phone rang again. It was Mark. Her heart raced, but at the same time, a sense of determination began to grow within her. This call would not be like the others. She knew that this moment would be crucial for her journey of self-discovery. Taking a deep breath, she answered. Mark's voice sounded familiar yet distant. He started talking about the happy moments they shared, trying to seduce her with memories of a past that now felt blurred. Samantha listened but did not let herself be swept away by emotions. Instead, every word he said reminded her of the reasons why she had left. The toxic cycle that had engulfed her was not a life she wanted anymore. Mark, I can't keep going like this, she interrupted, her voice firm. I'm not the same anymore. I don't want to go back to who I was. I need time and space to find myself. She felt the weight of those words. It was the first time she put herself first, and the feeling was liberating. On the other end of the line, the silence was deafening. Mark, surprised and hurt, began to plead. He tried to convince her to reconsider, to remember the plans they had. But Samantha, now with newfound clarity, reaffirmed her stance. I'm not going to be swayed by empty promises. I deserve more than this. I deserve to be happy. The conversation intensified, and the tension grew. Mark's anger and frustration were palpable. He called her ungrateful, trying to manipulate her emotionally. But Samantha, instead of giving in, remained steadfast. Each of his words only reinforced her determination not to turn back. She recalled the lessons she learned from Philip and Anna about the importance of setting boundaries and valuing herself. With every exchange, Samantha felt stronger, as if she were finally breaking the last ties that bound her to the past. I'm not here to be your crutch, Mark. I have my own life now, and I'm learning to love it, she said, realizing that she was not only affirming her choice but also celebrating her new identity. As she hung up, a mix of relief and anxiety washed over her. The loneliness that had accompanied her was no longer a shadow but a companion that helped her find herself. Samantha looked at the blank canvases around her and felt a wave of inspiration. Instead of letting herself be down, she decided it was time to channel all that energy into something creative. Picking up a brush and starting to paint became an act of liberation. The colors began to dance on the canvas, reflecting her journey of pain and hope. As the hours passed, she realized that each brushstroke was an affirmation of her strength. The shades of blue and green represented her sadness and renewal, while the touches of yellow and red symbolized her passion for life and the courage she was discovering. The painting became a mirror of her soul, a way to express everything she had lived. In that moment, Samantha understood that true wealth was not in having someone by her side, but in finding peace within herself. The solitude that once terrified her now felt like a sacred space where she could grow and reinvent herself. With each new layer of paint, she felt closer to who she truly was. When Anna arrived to visit her, she found Samantha completely absorbed in her art. The serene expression on her face and the passion in her hands showed that something had changed. Upon seeing the canvas, Anna was impressed. "You are incredible! This is beautiful," she exclaimed, and the two friends embraced, celebrating not only the art but also this new phase of Samantha's life. In that instant, Samantha realized she was not alone. The friendships she had cultivated were true treasures, and she finally felt part of something greater. With the strength of her experiences and the beauty of her new connections, she was ready to embrace the future. And so, amidst laughter and conversation, Samantha knew she had overcome her greatest challenge. It was not just about leaving Mark behind, but about finding her own path, filled with self-love and self-worth. Her journey was, and always would be, a celebration of life, a testament that true freedom comes from within. Samantha sat in front of the canvas, still enveloped by the energy of her conversation with Mark. The silence that followed the call seemed to echo in her mind, but instead of anguish, she felt profound relief. The decision to distance herself from a relationship that harmed her was a milestone in her life, and now she was ready to live this new phase. In the days that followed, Samantha's transformation intensified. She spent hours in her apartment, lost in her art. The vibrant colors filling the canvases were not just expressions of her emotions but also a reflection of her newly discovered strength. The solitude that once terrified her was now becoming a space for creativity and self-discovery. With each new painting, she felt more connected to her inner self. Anna, her loyal friend, became a constant presence. She visited frequently, bringing not only support but also new ideas and inspirations. On one of those afternoons, while they were surrounded by paints and brushes, Anna observed how much Samantha had changed. "You are so different, so alive. It's as if you found a part of yourself that was lost," Anna commented, admiring one of the artworks Samantha had created. Samantha smiled, feeling the warmth of her friend's words. "I think I finally realized that I don't need someone to define me. I'm learning to love myself, to value myself. That's all I've ever wanted," she replied, her voice filled with emotion. The conversation flowed naturally, and the two friends supported each other, sharing their fears and achievements. It was a moment of genuine connection. As time passed, Samantha began to receive positive feedback about her paintings. She decided to share her work on social media, and the response was surprising. People started praising her pieces, commenting on how her colors conveyed deep emotions. This recognition encouraged her to further explore her passion for art. She signed up for a local exhibition, a step that would have seemed unthinkable before. On the day of the exhibition, Samantha was nervous, but the excitement outweighed the fear. When she saw her paintings on display, a feeling of accomplishment enveloped her. Friends, family, and even strangers admired her work. This was proof that she had overcome challenges and found a new purpose. Anna was by her side, always encouraging her, and together they celebrated every small triumph. After the exhibition, Samantha's life began to change. She was invited to participate in workshops and artistic events, and her confidence grew with each new experience. One day, while talking with Anna, she reflected on how her decision to leave Mark had opened doors that once seemed closed. She said, with a sparkle in her eyes, that she never imagined she could get this far. Every step she took made her realize she was capable of much more than she had thought. Anna smiled, proud of her friend. She commented, holding Samantha's hand in support, that Samantha had freed herself, and this freedom brought an incredible light to her life. She had always known Samantha had special talent. Over time, memories of Mark became a distant part of her story. Samantha no longer felt trapped by them. Instead, she focused on the future, full of optimism. She understood that life was a cycle of ups and downs, but now she was ready to face any challenge, confident that she had the strength to move forward. On a quiet night, while gazing at the stars through the window, Samantha reflected. She knew that the journey of self-discovery would never end, but now she was at peace with herself. Through art, she had found not only a means of expression but also a way to connect with the world around her. More importantly, she had discovered the importance of loving herself first. Samantha finally felt free, and this freedom was the key to a new beginning. She was ready to embrace whatever came her way, with courage and an open heart, knowing she had chosen her own path and, above all, deserved to be happy. Samantha looked around her small makeshift gallery, filled with her works and the sparkle in the eyes of the visitors. That space, which once seemed lonely and empty, now pulsed with life and energy. With each compliment she received, she felt a piece of her old insecurity fade away. With every brushstroke, she had freed herself from a weight that had accompanied her for so long. The decision to leave Mark was not just a choice, but a turning point in her life. The pain of the past had transformed into fuel for her art and, consequently, for her happiness. That night, as the exhibition came to an end, Samantha and Anna sat in a corner, watching the paintings and listening to the visitors' comments. Anna, with a radiant smile, turned to Samantha and said that she had done it. Look around. She had reinvented herself and achieved all of this with her talent. Samantha nodded, feeling the emotion rise within her. She never thought she would be capable of getting this far. Every critique, every compliment made her realize she was stronger than she had imagined. She reflected on the journey that brought her here, the fear of the unknown, the inner struggle to distance herself from someone who limited her, and the courage needed to open herself up to new experiences. Each step had been a learning experience. Samantha knew that the path of self-discovery was just beginning, but now she had the tools and confidence necessary to move forward. She understood that success was not just about being recognized, but finding satisfaction and joy in her own art and in the love she cultivated for herself. Her friendship with Anna had also strengthened during this journey. They had become more than friends. They were creative partners who supported each other. Samantha realized the power of true connections, how one person can change another's trajectory. Anna not only encouraged her to pursue her dreams but also became a pillar during moments of doubt. Together, they learned that friendship is a powerful force that can illuminate even the darkest days. As the night approached, Samantha felt grateful for everything she had achieved. She knew life would be full of challenges but also joys. The past would no longer define her, and the freedom she now felt was a gift she allowed herself to have. Looking at her works, Samantha saw not just colors and shapes, but the representation of every battle she had won. And more importantly, she saw herself strong, independent, and full of dreams. At the end of the night, as the last visitors said their goodbyes, Samantha made a promise to herself. She would continue to explore her art, love herself, and allow herself to be happy. In her heart, she knew that every step taken was a celebration of her courage and an invitation to the future. Therefore, if you are also seeking your own journey of self-discovery and overcoming challenges, remember that every small victory counts. Don't be afraid to distance yourself from what doesn't serve you and embrace what brings you joy. Share your experiences and reflections in the comments. Let's create a community of support and inspiration. Like and subscribe for more stories that encourage you to find your own light. The world needs your story, and together we can make a difference.